Let's now discuss the situation in and around Syria with RT's contributor Afshin Rattansi, joining me live from London. Afshin, in a moment we'll talk about the refugee crisis emerging there, reaching the 2 million mark. But first, let's just talk about where the countries are standing at the moment. France, for example, saying it will not go ahead with a strike unless US Congress sanctions military action. And so does that actually mean that this has got nothing to do with the UN Security Council? It all depends on what the US says.
That's right. President Obama, that first African-American president in history, is presiding over what he presumably realizes is a direct conflict with the United Nations. Of course, he does have Ban Ki-moon, a sanguine figure who doesn't seem to care that much about the fact it looks like it may suffer the same fate as the League of Nations. But President Francois Hollande, yes, cutting a suitably Napoleonic figure, saying, we feel very strongly about it, but we won't do it if President Obama doesn't get his congressional support. I don't know, unclear at the moment whether President Obama needs that congressional support, but he has it anyway if he gives away on Obamacare, maybe.
Well, it seems that he has got that support because today the leaders have said they will support military intervention, and of course that big vote is next week. But so do you think then there will be a definite vote in Congress for Obama to go ahead? The indications are there.
I suppose when we first heard the Russian Defense Ministry talking about ballistic items being shot out of ships, perhaps, in the past 24 hours, it should drive home the point to people around the world that Obama can strike at any moment. He is, after all, conducting drone strikes in the past 72 hours in Yemen and in Afghanistan. So I don't think he'll wait for that approval. He's quite convinced he will get that approval, definitely, and there'll be a few deals on things that President Obama didn't particularly want anyway and was only doing to please his base. But no, I don't think he needs congressional approval, the exact vote. He was very clear to say he needed no timeline, and the fact that President Assad is threatening US national security, in which case there's plenty of precedence for the United States president to act alone. The congressional thing is a bit of window dressing.
2 million refugees now, Afshin, a humanitarian crisis unfolding. What sort of repercussions does this have on neighbouring countries?
When one looks at those number of American destroyers, the number of missiles, Tomahawk missiles, the cost of all of that, historians of the future will be saying, why, when there was a peace deal on the table to be discussed in Geneva, did Obama destroy and torpedo the peace deal and leave the plight of the refugees to get worse and worse? One should add, of course, that while there are brilliant people working for NGO refugee agencies, they act as an arm of the American government. It might be incumbent on some of those refugee agency volunteers and more so the people who are paid to work for them to look at where their salaries are coming from the same people that are creating the refugee crisis. But as you say, 2 million. When I was last in Syria, I was writing for Counterpunch, and I was talking about the massive amount of care and concern President Assad's government had for the results of the NATO invasion of Iraq, taking in the equivalent proportionately of 20 million refugees if it was the United States.
Just briefly, you're there in London. Syria seems a long, long way away. But this refugee crisis, could it have some sort of impact on Europe?
It was very recently that both parties here, the Conservative and Labour, ratcheting up pressure, saying we don't want asylum seekers. The Labour Party here often saying we're swamped with asylum seekers. I think they live on $7 a day. Of course, the refugee crisis will lead to Syrians looking for succor. And I'm sure Britain and America will welcome all these refugees. As you say, hundreds of thousands in that region, and there will be refugees on the streets of London if Obama carries out his plans for war.
RT contributor Afshin Rattansi, thanks so much for your comments, your perspective, live from London.